Good day. Welcome to day 3 of Truth and Reconciliation Week. I'm Brenda Gunn, the Academic and Research Director at the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. I'm Red River Métis, and I'm currently located in Treaty 1 territory, the homeland of the Red River Métis. I'm so pleased to be here today with 4 artists who are involved in developing an annual series of stamps for Canada Post in connection with National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Today, joining us, we have Jackie Travers, who is an Anishinaabe from Lake St. Martin First Nation in Manitoba, Gail Uyagaki Kabluna, who is Inuit and lives in Nunavut. We have Kim Gullion Stewart, who is Métis from Athabasca, Alberta, and currently lives near Kamloops, BC. We also have Blair Thompson, who resides in Mono, Ontario. We also have some of the Canada Post staff who are involved in working on this project. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to start by watching a short video about the stamps. And then you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions to the artists who are involved in this project. You can place your questions in the chat function on Hubelo, and then after the video, I can facilitate asking them to the artists. So we can go ahead and start the video if we're ready to cue it up. Thank you.
Tansei Kiawau, Kim Gullion Stewart, Nitsika Son, and I am from the Métis Nation.
My name is Blair Thompson. I'm a graphic designer and creative director.
Ublakut, Gail Uyagaki Kablunak Nuyunga. I am an artist and I'm Inuit.
My name is Jackie Travers. I'm an Anishinaabe from Lake St. Martin. I grew up in the city of Winnipeg. I'm a painter, mainly do indigenous artwork. The image is called Seeds of Change. What inspired the artwork is, the discovery of the children. The center is the national flower, the bunchberry, and on each side is the generations of people we lost to residential schools. But it can also be looked at as future generations blossoming, growing. Well, when I painted the stamp, I had quite a bit of emotions because, they had already discovered the children at Kamloops, and that really affected me, being a mother and a grandmother. I thought of my own children. Also, I grew up in care, so I thought, that could have easily happened to me as a child. I know the feeling of feeling helpless and hopeless when you're on your own as a child, when there's nobody there to help you or protect you, and all you have is yourself. So I think about those children, what they felt, and knowing that there was no way out of that situation, that they were helpless and they were hopeless. And I think about how hard that must have been for them, and no child should ever have to feel that way. Truth and reconciliation should be important for all Canadians because you're living in Canada and you need to know the truth about the country and the land you walk on. For us all to get along, we need to know our past so that we don't repeat those things, and we can look at the future with new focus and new eyes. I think the stamps are important because it's a step forward. It means inclusion. It means that any step forward to talk about truth and reconciliation, in my opinion, is good.
I chose to do a lino cut block print for my quadrant of the stamp. I did an Inuit woman in a traditional dress of a Namauti, and she's lighting a traditional lamp that was used for warmth and light in igloos and tents. It's called a kudlik, and she's looks at peace. And I chose to do this artwork because I think that there are two sides of truth and reconciliation. I think that there's the indigenous side that like we need to concentrate on our own healing and helping each other recover from the impacts of residential schools and colonization. And I think that there's the settler side of truth and reconciliation, which involves a lot of learning and coming to terms with how this country came to be. And I wanted to do an artwork that kind of blocked out the external influence of settler Canadians and the settler state and focused on the strength and continuity of Inuit culture. I have a very deep and personal relationship with people who have been to residential school. Everyone older than me in my family went to residential school, and I'm the first generation to not go to residential school. Generally in my artwork, I choose not to focus on the trauma. I think that that's a personal choice and a boundary that I had to make for myself. I like being an Inuit person, and I like the parts of my life and myself and my family that are Inuit. I think in order for reconciliation to begin, I would like to have a conversation with people who are not Indigenous and have them be able to talk about it, to have some idea of what my culture or my life has been like, the inequality involved in being an Indigenous person in the country. So I think the stamps are an important step in getting the recognition of what Truth and Reconciliation Day is about and bringing more awareness to the Indigenous people and Indigenous culture, Indigenous land.
The map that I used is a map of Tuatna from 1914, and it covers the area of Athabasca where I was born and my father and his father, etc. It's an area where I feel connected to the land. The map itself has a lot of economic development plans that might have been in the works. And so what I did was I placed my beadwork over top as a way to talk about connection, Indigenous connection to the land, the fact that Indigenous people were here, and how we feel connected to the land from a stewardship point of view rather than an economic point of view. And so when I'm creating my work, I'm very aware of the fact that artwork is a way in. It's often a way in for people to open up conversation, to talk about things that are difficult, but to also talk about things that are joyful, and also to talk about things that could be solutions for the future. When I think about what inspires my work, I think about the quote by Louis Riel that says, "My people will sleep for 100 years, but when they awake, it is the artists that will give them their spirit back." And I take that to heart. The reason truth and reconciliation is so important to me personally is because of the path that my ancestors have taken along the way. And I've been ever so painfully aware of the pain that they have suffered as Indigenous people. And so I take this path for them. So I really feel that reconciliation starts with myself. It starts within myself. It's a journey that I personally need to take. Then from there, it goes out to the community, and from the community to the country. So truth and reconciliation is important to all people because it allows us to become community again. Instead of an us and them, instead of a me, we become a we. For those of young people, my hope is that you can lead the way and show us a better future. You can show us how to get along. The pain of the past stops here. It stops with us. And with you, young people, we can move forward in a really good way.
So the artwork in my quadrant is a symbolic interpretation of two perspectives. The sadness and the pain endured by Indigenous people and survivors of the residential school system, and the shame and the acknowledgement of this harsh reality by the settler. The eyes looking out from behind the hands convey the message that settlers must never ever look away again, and we mustn't repeat past mistakes. The settler perspective was important for me to communicate because I really wanted to convey some of the hard truths that we need to face and represent, the trauma that was endured and we need to take responsibility for. I use simplicity and visual clarity in my work. I really wanted to try to evoke an emotional response in the stamp design. And I definitely want it to be thought-provoking for all those that look at it. I've learned through this project that truth and reconciliation means different things to different people. It's important that we communicate these views so that we can all gain a deeper understanding of the meaning of reconciliation from others. By combining the four quadrants into a fuller circle, we're collectively coming together as one, whilst retaining our own diverse and unique perspectives. Canadians must do more than talk about reconciliation. We must challenge ourselves to deepen our collective awareness of our dark and painful history. We must learn harsh lessons from it and take the time to reflect so that we begin to walk the path of healing and reconciliation together, moving forward but never forgetting the past. Canadians need to learn these truths as well, not just what happened in the residential schools, but what the impact it had in people's lives, Even something as omnipresent as a postage stamp could be the start of a journey forward, which could make changes that are needed.
So the survivors of residential school went through a terrible experience sometimes, and it's because of them that we are able to continue our own traditions and culture and language.
I have the deepest amount of respect for survivors. They serve as a remembrance to the painful past, but also hope for the future as a resilient people.
I have to thank all the survivors for their courage and strength and determination to tell the truth, and really all the credit goes to them because we wouldn't be having this conversation without their stories, without their truth. So miigwech.
Wow, what an amazing introduction to such an important project. So before we get into the Q&A section, I do want to ask each of the artists to introduce themselves. And I must apologize, I was mistaken earlier when I said Jackie Travers was able to join us. We had hoped that she was going to, but unfortunately, she's unable to join us today. But we do have 3 of the artists with us today. So Gail, can I ask you maybe to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah. So my name is Gail. I'm an artist. I do printmaking and ceramics, textile artworks, multimedia stuff. I come from a family of artists, and I'm currently based in Ottawa.
Thank you. And Kim.
Let's say hello. My name is Kim Gullion Stewart, and I have been an artist for, well, since I could hold a crayon, basically. And I'm currently in the unceded territory of Tk'emlúps-te-Secwépemc. That's where my studio is. Graphic designer and commercial illustrator for about 30 years. And from there, I went over to academia and was teaching. And now I do studio work, beadwork, painting. I create textiles and a variety of those sorts of things. And I still do a bit of graphic design on the side.
Excellent, thank you. And Blair.
Hi everyone, my name is Blair Thompson. I'm a graphic designer and creative director. I'm based in Mono, Ontario, which is about an hour north of Toronto. I run a design studio called Believe In and mainly work in branding, graphic design, and visual communications. And Canada Post is one of my clients who I design stamps and stamp products for. And I've been doing this for about 25 years.
Excellent, thanks. And maybe I'll just take the liberty of reading some of Jackie's bio because I do want to acknowledge her contribution to this really important project. So Jackie is a multidisciplined artist, Indigenous artist, who works in several mediums from oil and acrylic paintings to mixed media, stop motion animation, and sculpture. She draws her inspiration from her Indigenous culture and her experiences as a Native woman living in Winnipeg. Jackie is widely known in art communities across Canada. Her paintings, drawings, documentaries, and sculptures speak to the realities of being an Indigenous woman. She has created stop motion animation on missing and murdered women in Canada, as well as another on the 60 scoop entitled Two Scoops and Empty, a tribute to her estranged mother. And Jackie says she's deeply moved by the injustices faced by Indigenous peoples. So again, I want to thank and welcome the artists for joining us today for our live Q&A session with our students around the country. A reminder to teachers that if you have questions or your students have questions they would like posed to the artists, you can place those in the chat in Hublot and I will share them with the artists today. But while the teachers are probably frantically typing into the chat box, I'm going to take this opportunity to maybe start and ask a couple of questions myself. So the video gave a really lovely introduction and background to this project, and each of you spoke a bit to your inspirations and motivations for connecting with this project. But I'm wondering if you could all maybe share with us maybe just a little bit more about what it means for you to be part of this project, which is, again, in support of truth and reconciliation nationally. Gail, can I maybe start with you and then I'll move through the order I've been going onto Kim and then Blair?
Sure. Well, it's probably the biggest project I've been involved in so far in my art career. So that is, I don't know, it has a lot of weight to it. And I'm really happy that I could provide an Inuit voice to the 4 different groups of people that make up the country.
Thanks. How about Kim? Did you have more you wanted to share?
Yeah, one of the things I mentioned to Blair actually when I first got involved in this project, it was very exciting for me because I remember when I first started out as a graphic designer so many years ago, one of the things I had wanted to always do was be involved in designing or being part of creating an image for a stamp, and how much more meaningful to be able to speak for the Métis voice in our country as well on such an important topic. So it's just such a meaningful project to be involved in, and super grateful to have had the opportunity.
Thanks. And Blair, did you have any thoughts you wanted to share at this point?
Just to me, it was particularly felt an important project I wanted to be involved in. I really wanted to try to represent the kind of spirit of truth and reconciliation in the entire series, and I wanted to really bring together the unity and the uniqueness of each of the perspectives and that we bring, but still have a kind of combined sense of achievement together, and that we're really working together to create something that has some weight and can be looked at in lots of different ways across all of our different backgrounds.
Oh, that's wonderful. And actually, Blair, that kind of leads me into part of my next question that I wanted to ask all of you. So they're individual steps, but they fit together beautifully, as we saw on the last the sort of last moment in the video. Can you tell us a little bit about the process? Did you all work individually, or was there any sort of working together in the process, or anyone have some thoughts? Maybe Kim, can I put you on the spot first?
Sure, yeah. Well, I have to give credit to Blair as the coordinator and orchestrator of all of the works. Honestly, you know, we were working, at least I was working just on my own vision, but with Blair's guidance, I believe that Blair was kind of in the background, you know, guiding us and helping us to put our pieces together. But I kind of was thinking about this earlier today, and I was thinking about when you go to a potluck, you know, and you wonder, is everybody going to bring spaghetti, right? But whatever people bring, it ends up being just what you need for that moment and that time. And I think that's kind of what happened here.
Thanks, Blair. So you were doing, or thank you, Kim, sorry, Blair, you were doing some of the coordination. Then did you want to add to that at all, of sort of how the process went of bringing and working with the different artists together, or?
So I was originally the person who would have been commissioned to develop the concept for the stamp, and part of the process I went through was to come up with a whole range of different solutions, and one of them was to introduce 4 separate components that come together as one. But for all of the ideas that I developed, I worked with this team of 3 collaborators, and it was important to me to have representation of the whole, as opposed to just focusing on one particular Indigenous group or even just my own perspective. I wanted it to be very much you know, a collective voice. So I was the person that identified the artists and brought them all in and spoke to them and coordinated them, gave them direction, and forming kind of close bonds with each of them. And I didn't really want each other to be influenced by one another. I wanted them to have their own voice, and it was my job, I guess, is to direct them to the outcome, that it all work together in harmony.
Excellent. Gail, did you have any thoughts you wanted to add at this point?
Yeah, initially we submitted designs for a few different concepts and little write-ups about explaining the art and what we thought about truth and reconciliation as a whole. And that kind of forced me to figure out how exactly I do think of truth and reconciliation, because it was kind of just this big idea, and I hadn't really put my words to my thoughts before I had this project. So I did a lot of reading to see like what other people have said about their thoughts on truth and reconciliation. I talked to like family members and friends, and finally had an idea of what I think of the day. And that's when I thought of like the two different responsibilities for Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in Canada. And so that was probably an important thing for me to do for myself. And then like working with Blair was really great, as because it's such a like a big subject and a sensitive one as well. He did it really well, and it was very smooth. And for some of the concepts, they were showing more of a pessimistic view of reconciliation, and he was very like open, and there was no like influence into like what I was deciding for myself. So I was really glad that he was just like created a space where like any opinion was like a safe one.
Excellent. Thanks, Gail. I want to pick up a little bit about what you're saying, because there was a question coming in about what role do you see art playing in reconciliation moving forward? And relatedly, what are the hopes? I don't know if you want to continue to answer some of that question about the role of art and reconciliation. It's
well, that probably plays into the artwork that I did for my stamp, is the continuity of Inuit culture and the strength of it. Inuit artists in general have always had really strong imagery, and that's been consistent for, you know, eternity, I guess. And like that was where my concept for my design came from, was just the continuity of the people and culture, and kind of shutting out the outsider influence, and just like doing what we've always done and continuing on.
Thank you. Blair, any thoughts about the role of art in reconciliation in Canada?
I mean, to me, art should be provocative and thought-provoking, and in communications, it's kind of the same thing. So for me, I think it's just using as a medium to get people to think, and obviously to do their own thoughts and research, and hopefully react from it. As long as it inspires some change in your mind, then I think it's doing a really good job. And like I said, by each of us bringing our own perspectives in, it gives people lots to think about.
Yeah. Kim, any thoughts to add on here?
Yeah, I know as a Métis person, I'm kind of the bridge between the two. And Brenda, I'm sure you get that as well, right? Where we have our Indigenous relatives and ancestors, and also we have our settler relatives and ancestors. So I really feel like my artwork can be a combination of both, and a bridge between the two different cultures. And when you look at my stamp, you see that too, because I really think of maps as a form of artwork. And so, you know, you have the map underneath. And incidentally, my father a long time ago was a power engineer, and he worked with maps a lot, bringing power into some of the very northern communities that didn't have power yet, like Rainbow Lake and whatnot. And then on top of the maps, then I'm placing my beadwork. And so I see that the two images together look very beautiful. And I think that that's something that art can do as well. You know, it can bring the two different points of view and the two different sides together, and they actually can look very beautiful together.
Excellent. Blair, I'm going to come back to you, and I'm going to pick up something that you were talking about, which is that sort of inspiring conversations. And I want to ask one of the questions coming from the students, and what great questions. What dialogue do you hope will be a result from the stamp. So are there specific conversations that you are hoping might be inspired from the collection and supporting reconciliation in Canada?
For me personally, all I want is for people to take notice of it, not to ignore it any longer, just to think about what this means in their own communities and in Canada at large, and just to begin to make small steps, even if that's what it is, towards like bigger ones. We still have a long way to go, but if we don't start making them, then we're just talking about it. So all I want is for people to talk and some action, even if it's just talking more, I mean, amongst people in their own communities or their friends and family, whatever it might be. Brenda, Bronwyn may have another perspective, potentially from a Canada Post perspective. She might want to comment, but I'll leave that to her.
Okay, Bronwyn, I'm going to circle around to you. I'm going to speak to our two artists, and then I'll come call on you if you're up for it. Gail, how about you? Any thoughts on particular conversations that you were hoping to spark with your stamp or with the collection?
Well, I think it was really important for the 4 stamps to include a settler portion. I think some people might view truth and reconciliation as only an Indigenous issue or something for Indigenous people to be working towards, but there's a lot of work to be done by the settlers in Canada, and I think it was really, really important that we included that section so that they know that they're a part of this too.
Excellent. Kim.
Yeah, I just want to second what Gail is saying. There are a lot of times I have people come to me that say, we really care, we deeply care. How are we a part of truth and reconciliation? And I think part of it is just witnessing other people's stories and listening to and acknowledging, that these stories exist. And from that point of view, that's a great conversation to have. Just ask somebody, what can I do? Or do you have anything you need to share?
Thanks, Bronwyn. And you might want to introduce yourselves. I'm not sure the students have gotten to meet you yet.
Sure. My name is Bronwyn Graves, and I am the Director of Stamp Services. I'm the director responsible for the stamp program at Canada Post. So it was my great privilege to work with Blair, Kim, Gail, and Jackie on the creation of these stamps. And I will really echo what's been said here already. I think the power in this series and our hope for this series is that stamps travel. These will travel to every post office in the country, and then they will travel with further words and thoughts between Canadians across the country. And I hope that Canadians will take this conversation community by community to see what reconciliation means to them in their lives personally, at the community level, as well as at the national level. And as Kim and Gail have already said, I think there's incredible power in having these 4 stamps come together. It is deeply symbolic. This choice was made really deliberately because it does take all of us. And there is, as Blair has noted, and I will echo, a really significant settler responsibility. And it was important that we highlighted that on these stamps.
Excellent. And speaking back to the stamps, we've had a question asking people are asking if they could see the stamps again. And I'm wondering if some of our wonderful Canada Post people might be able to open up the image, and maybe we could share screen again, or the tech people who are smarter than I, maybe they can figure out a way to have that up. If we can share it again, they were really beautiful. I have a question, and I admit I am not an artist. I've been trained as a lawyer, which I feel like is the complete opposite of art. I use words and maybe too many words some of the time. So what I was thinking about when I was watching this video and when I saw the stamps was that yesterday we were talking to Carrie Newman about the witness blanket, and he talked about his piece of art being 40 feet wide and 10 feet high. It's big. A stamp is small. Are there challenges, or how did you approach trying to take such a big subject matter, such a heavy, important subject matter like truth and reconciliation and the history and legacy of residential schools, and bring that into a beautiful, amazing piece of art that's the size of a postage stamp? Any thoughts or on the process that people could share? That must have been a challenge, at least in my head. That's sort of mind-blowing, and because they're so beautiful and have so much to them, but the canvas, as it were, is quite small. Any thoughts? I feel bad calling on people. I don't know if any of our artists want to raise their hand if they're willing to sort of speak to maybe my silly question, but. Or are artists such professionals that it's like we can work on any size canvas scale? Did you have a thought?
Yeah, I actually like working pretty small. One of my favorite sizes is like 5 by 7 with like an even smaller print on there. Stamp was that it didn't need so much detail that like it would get lost. I wanted to make it like bold enough that like the image would get across successfully even on such a small small thing. And so I do printmaking, so I really like just like the simplicity of lino cut printmaking and just simple black and white. I think it's really striking. And yeah, I carved a little block, maybe like 4 inches. And then on the video, you could see like the areas where I carve remain white, and then you roll ink over top and then transfer the block onto paper. And the parts where I carved are the white parts that you can see, and the black is where the ink was resting on top of the block. Yeah, it was fun.
Excellent. Yeah. Kim or Blair, any comments about the size? Yeah, Kim.
I did the exact opposite of what Gail did. And I'm very aware that black and white is such a beautiful, pardon me, a beautiful way to represent things, and especially in a small space. But one of the things I was thinking about, and I think about a lot now, is the idea of infinity, and things can get infinitely larger, but they also get infinitely smaller in our world too, right? To the very amounts of things that we can't even see without the aid of some sort of a visual device. So I wanted to put more detail into mine to remind people that, you know, the more you look, the more you see, and that things are still there, even though we may not see them on the surface. They're still there, and they're smaller and smaller. So yeah, I think mine is comparatively a lot busier than Gail's, and yeah, that's the reason.
Excellent. Blair, any thoughts on this one?
So yeah, I mean, obviously it's a small thing. I think as professionals, we all kind of have a fairly good understanding about reproduction and scales and things like that, just from working in this field anyhow. Believe it or not, when I started the project and I pulled the 4 together, it was actually originally on a single stamp. So you can imagine how small it was on that. But it was kind of pretty apparent that it warranted splitting them out into the 4 separate individual stamps, because it also made them more powerful, but also gave them more physical scale, to let the individuals shine more, which I thought was really important part of the process. And I think that each of the quadrants are actually, the originals are quite different in scale. Like Jackie's is actually, she's not here to speak for herself, but hers is by far the largest. It's actually a fairly large canvas. And then Gail's is the smallest, and Kim's is more in the middle between the three, and mine's completely done digitally. So, but I wanted there to be this kind of nice combining kind of visual connection between them all. So there's like a nice balance in colors and things like that. But also that they kind of feel like they represent culturally the individual groups as well, like in an artistic sense. And I think that the mixture of different levels of detail and scale actually is a really nice thing, that they still hold together as one, but they still have their own qualities.
And I think that in and of itself is a really important message, right? Is that each of these pieces, they stand on their own, but they also fit together. And when they come together, that picture that we see is so beautiful. And I think it's a really important message, at least for how I see sort of reconciliation in Canada, is that we're all coming together, but not in that melting pot sort of way that we all need to sort of fit in and be the same. But actually, it's that diversity that really is what makes us beautiful and makes us strong. I also want to, like, for me, I just want to say that I love the different mediums as well. Like, it shows that diversity, it shows the diversity of Indigenous peoples, right? We're talking a canvas and painting, we're talking lino print, we're talking beadwork, we're talking digital media, right? Like, just that diversity, I think, is also really wonderfully reflected. I'm being reminded that we're almost out of time, and there's some really great kind of, I'm going to call them technical questions. I don't know if that's the right way to think of them, but someone is asking about the money that's going to be raised. Canada Post folks, I probably think, are the ones who want to answer this one, but someone was wondering if you're donating the monies that are being, is there money that's made from the selling of the stamps, and is there anything in place about the funds that might come from these?
We actually have 2 stamps that have launched in the month of September that touch on Indigenous issues in Canada. One is the Truth and Reconciliation stamp that we're talking about today, and also a stamp called the Community Foundation stamp that launches annually, and that actually launched last week. And part of our community foundation efforts include a signature grant that's focuses on Indigenous efforts, whether it's artistic, educational, but go directly to Indigenous communities to try and work towards truth, reconciliation, and address their needs at a more immediate level.
Excellent. And then there's a question about, will the stamps be used as regular stamps from now on, or are they a special edition or a commemorative stamp that will just be out for a certain period of time?
That's a great question. This is the first in a series. So we will be making a set of stamps every year for now, and actually no end date. We're going to keep going. There are a lot of stories to tell. This is an important conversation to have. So next year, keep an eye out. We'll be working on the second in the series. The stamps will be available for 2 years in your post offices legally, but realistically, they're usually not. People will buy them before then. So you can get them in your local post office or online starting tomorrow.
Excellent. Okay, well, we are just about out of time, and I want to make sure I have the opportunity to thank Canada Post for this wonderful initiative. Thank the artists for their wonderful work and for joining us today and answering the students' questions. I want to thank the students for tuning in and for really engaging with everyone today. We have a couple of more sessions here in our Truth and Reconciliation Week, Education Week. So I hope you're able to join us in those. But with that, I say thank you to everyone and have a wonderful day.